Hello, and welcome to Hopeful Conversations, brought to you by Robbie's Hope Foundation. I am your host, Kari Eckert. Joining me today is Mary Rondenet, a breathing coach who has learned how to interact with whales and dolphins to focus on breathing, majorly focusing on the meditation behind it to reduce anxiety and stress and connect with the energy of these animals. Thank you, Mary, for joining us today on Hopeful Conversations.
Thank you for having me. I feel very honored to be here.
Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
Yes, Mary Rondenet, correct.
Oh, good. And you're in Warrenville, Illinois. You are a certified whale breathing coach, a certified transformational breath facilitator, and an EnergyTouch practitioner.
Correct. Yes.
Where
I
do you
have a
want to
lot
start?
more, but I needed to okay, we don't need to know. I was one of those people that would sit in the center of a room grabbing so many books, I was very fascinated by the human being through movement, through breath, through coaching. So.
And you are the sixth child, and I was on your website, and you have some learning disabilities, and you feel like some of your where you've been drawn into life and are now practicing comes from some of just who you are.
Yeah, correct. I feel like probably the last part of this life of me really experiencing this passion and love for who I am and how my work really is an important piece in the world. How's that? From all that, which that wasn't always true. You know what I mean? Like you had to go through a lot of that self-doubt stuff.
A compassion of differences. I saw that on your website as well. I found that interesting.
A compassion of differences. I will repeat to make sure I heard you
Yeah.
correctly.
Yes, compassion of differences. We all have them, but you have kind of cued in on that. What does that mean
Yeah.
to you?
Compassion of differences is a lot about, I think in our culture right now, I mean, especially what we're going to be talking about, deeper with the mental health crisis, is we're always looking at how we're different, and if we're not aligned in that similarity, we judge it. And sometimes those messengers, as I call them, are really about teaching us more about compassion and how do we integrate a more kindness and loving place for each other. I mean, what is normal, really, right? And I think that when I was talking about that, it's just even with my own story, my whole life was judging me on how I was different, the way I heard the world, how I experienced the world, because my deafness created um, um, me to meet the world through hearing very different than somebody that is hearing. And I thought that was wrong. So does that mean, and I had to really redefine that in myself and find compassion and that gift. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely, it does. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
How did you discover the connection between breathing and whale breathing in particular?
So it's a interesting. I was already a coach and taking people on retreats and doing more what I called soulful work. I was taking people out, away from phones, away from technology, and really unplugging. And it was really interesting because part of it was people also going through withdrawals because we're so connected to this technology world that we almost panic when it's not there. And I was, because I'm a very observer. I really see a lot. And one of the things that happened was I kept feeling like with my own individual coaching, something was missing. And especially because a lot of my coaching was a lot based on grief. And I realized I couldn't figure out what it was, but I did notice people stopped breathing when they bumped into trauma or grief or hard feeling. So, but I didn't put the dots together. Then I was out on a trip with a group, and what happened was we were in San Ignacio, Mexico, with the gray whales. And this is an area where you're on a boat, and these whales will come up to you. And you can sometimes hug them or kiss them, and sometimes I see people almost wanting to jump in, like no, no. And there was a particular whale so I was doing a lot of soul searching, and this particular whale came to the boat, and I felt such a connection and wanted to just kiss it and be with it and hug it. And he was too low, so I couldn't get down there. No, I said, "Can you raise so I can kiss you?" It's kind of a crazy story. I was initiated. So what happened is he raised his head, and I was able to kiss, but his spout was right over my face. This is how I have to hear the message. And he released his exhale all over me. I was just sitting there and whale slime from this whale, but it was like this moment, it's about the breath. It's the breath. It really I connected. Oh my goodness, it's the breath. So I was already doing a little bit of breath work, which is funny. I needed to get hit pretty hard with the breath, and I mean, it was almost like the whales guided me to this journey. And as even when we're out on boats, how we see them and find them when we're going to go jump in the waters with them is through their breath, their exhale, there's and what that does, for all of us. So with that being said, it was realizing first it was whale breath, but that didn't sound like it almost sounded like bad breath, whale breath. And then it kind of came into whale breathing. And it's really interesting because it was really given to me through the gift of the whale. And it's not an easy thing to sell, yet it's important because the energy of these whales are important to all humanity. And I think that people I mean, even now we're hearing a lot of beaching and how it affects people. Why are they beaching? Why are they coming? And how much it affects our hearts of this global thing going on in our world, our ocean.
And whale breathing can be something that a person can learn even when they're not. It's like you don't have to be around the whale. Like Mary, you can teach us the benefits of whale breathing, even myself here in Denver, Colorado.
Yes, I actually am the founder and developer of whale breathing, and it was based on a lot of the different modalities I did. Like my life was such a journey of okay, you're going to go to New York and do this movement program. Really? Why? Like me questioning it, but okay. And I just kind of followed guidance, and my guidance took me to a lot of amazing places, and sometimes scratching my head like, why am I supposed to do this? And through all those modalities created whale breathing. It was through working with eurythmy, which is a artistic type dance that was based on Rudolf Steiner, and it's very incorporated in whale breathing, but it's very soul. That's very soulful moving from a place more of soul. So yes, it is something that, but I simply to that question, yes, it's a very simple method to help people to reconnect to the breath consciously.
And therefore create like deeper calm, memory, and more clarity. Those are the benefits of practicing whale breathing?
Yeah, you know what? I feel like if it's okay to explain a little how it works, that it would help the audience
I would
understand
love
what.
that.
Okay. So
Yes.
and it was interesting because this is probably, it's the most simplest, most powerful self-healing modality we have, yet we don't know how to use it. Our breath. And when you think about it, I mean, even when we, come into the world, what makes us human? Our breath, right? I mean, it's such a simple thing.
Mm.
And what happens is, we come in the world, we have a beautiful circular breath, as I call it. And what that means is it's very connected. There's no pause in your breath. It's a very beautiful inhale, exhale breath. And that's what we're born with. I mean, and when you watch babies or animals, you see that beauty in breath. But through life, through trauma, through experiences, through fear, through, our breath changes our body. And then what happens is that it creates blockage within the body. Does that make sense? And so please tell me
Yes.
if I've lost you. So I create
No,
a
I'm
simple,
following.
yeah, I created a simple, more, especially for, because I talk to many different audiences all over the world. And I used the method of, well, this is one of, is the pressure cooker, because a lot of people understand when you cook with a pressure cooker, the importance of keeping an eye on that pressure, right? So, and those that don't know, a pressure cooker is a pot that we use, and we put like food in there, and we put food in it, and we seal it and put it on the fire. And as it heats up, that pot will warn us, uh-oh, too much heat, you need to release. So, okay, now that that pot is our body. Think of it that way, your body. And what happens with our body is that we have this world, and we have trauma from the past, we have life right now, we have, things, technology, all this stuff coming at us. And my work is very much about body, soul, spirit. So the body's taking in all this information, and the soul is trying to process that middle piece, the piece of like food that's inside. And what happens is then when that soul gets too overwhelmed, it starts to speak. Panic attacks, anxiety, feeling lost, feeling I'm trying to think of soul disease, but basically panic, anxiety, having a hard time breathing, catching up. So the hand with the pat, the hand comes and releases, right? Kind of helps release in that pressure. The breath is what is that hand. The breath. It's when that's happening with panic attacks and anxiety, the body's saying, breathe, breathe, because our carbon dioxides are rising. And what happens is then because really breathing, the kind of breath I work with is diaphragmatic breathing, which is using your diaphragm, which is here in the center. That diaphragmatic breathing is very involuntary breathing, which means we just breathe, right? We're just breathing. But back to trauma and life, our breathing's very shallow. So that means, and the
Mm-hmm.
diaphragm has two roles: bringing in oxygen, releasing the carbon dioxide. If we're not using that, the body gets out of balance. And it's constantly trying to tell us, breathe, breathe. And that's where mental health, to me, is in huge crisis, because we're not navigating the breath, because that's going to bring us back into harmony. So back, like what I was saying with the pot, What happens if we don't release it when it's telling us it's gonna explode? So is that? And I think that. Oh, go ahead. You can ask a question.
No, that helps a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like we notice like physical symptoms, but we don't notice the breath. Like we don't notice when we're panicked, when we feel anxiety, when we're not deep breathing.
Well, we notice it. We just don't know what to do with it. When we're having those panic. Yeah. What's going on? I'm having such a panic attack. I don't know why, So
most people just use a lot of shallow breath. Is that a correct statement?
Right. We are and you know what? There's a lot. We're a culture that is very running. I mean, even before, it was interesting. Before COVID, I kept feeling and saying because I also teach classes, I kept saying that I feel like we're going to come into a huge spiritual bankruptcy. I mean, it's almost like we're so out of balance. And then COVID happened. And I feel like it's kind of interesting because, we forget. I mean, yes, we're human beings, but Mother Earth is very powerful. And if there's a sense of out of alignment, what is ever going to be? What will be created to get us all back in balance is, and it just stopped the world. I mean, stopped it. We've never had that ever, really.
4 years into this, right?
Yep.
That was March 2020, and here we are 4 years later.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, and even from my journey of this work, especially because what happened with the COVID, when I also stopped, obviously, and then I went through the panic of how am I going to do my work with, I can't bring clients in, I can't touch, I can't be with people. And it made me also dive deeper into researching breath.
Okay.
And I really started to research this diaphragm because I was really surprised how much we don't talk about it. I mean, I've even asked people that are in like medical school, and I'm like, how much do they teach you about the diaphragm? And oh yeah, it was like a half a day glimpse. And I was like, it's so powerful, this muscle within us that it's how I feel it's a doorway to this world that's really important as a human being. Because when you breathe for an hour, diaphragmatic breathing, whale breathing, you not only meet the body, but you're going to meet the soul and the spiritual aspect of breath. And, it's just like, it's kind of like mindfulness, but now we're doing mindfulness breathing and really becoming conscious of how my body and listening to my body, this wisdom.
I had to pause when you said that because, like, that connection.
Yeah.
Can people handle that? Like, that's not our norm to experience kind of in our daily rushed hustle, be bombarded by everything. So taking the time to make that connection, can the average person handle that without, or that's a process, right?
It is a process. It's a great question too. And I will, and that's, you know what? I love that you asked that question because that is probably our biggest obstacle, because that judgment about breath. And it's safe to breathe. That's what we're here for. But I will say too that when we connect back to the breath and we have a discipline of, like, my discipline is 15 minutes in the morning, I do diaphragmatic breathing before I get out of bed, and just to connect to it. And what that means is just have a relationship with it. And then I also do it in the evening. very different than what my what I do with clients, but it's just bringing oxygen and removing the metabolic waste. And now with a classroom, we do an hour of breathing, and yes, it is taking the time to really believe within myself that I deserve to come and breathe for 1 hour, once a month or whatever you feel you need. And what happens is our body will store the oxygen levels will go be higher, and then it stays with you for a while because you gave yourself that time, so you feel more grounded, clear, focused, and because you're working with your oxygen, and you're also releasing that stuff that doesn't that kind of bogs you down and drains you. So we've removed that and brought more oxygen in and brought harmony back into the system. So then you'll for like I had a person in class share, because during COVID everybody was getting those oxygen level checks, because when you would get sick, that's what they were telling you to keep an eye on. And she was saying that before class, her level was at like 92% oxygen, and after class it was at 100, and she kept checking it every day, and her oxygen level was at 100 for almost a week and a half, and from just breathing for 1 hour. I mean, it's just because we're also, like I said, we're using our most important muscle in our body, our diaphragm, to help our body. So she's thinking.
What's the takeaway for? Yeah, I'm thinking, because it's like I tend to do breath work. I mean, I'm now working in this field, trying to help others, try to take care of myself. I notice I have good times. I notice I have harder times. And the harder times, it's usually I'm carrying it physically. I'm carrying it like my body. I'm 51 years old. I mean, there's always I'm trying to figure things out more, I think, now in this part of my life, in an effort to be able to help others. In some of the work that I now do, like my breath work is usually when I am feeling anxious, like maybe public speaking or in a situation, and I kind of try to do some breath work to just stop that pattern that my brain is starting to go down. And then I also try to do some breath work when I can't sleep, when I'm sleepless. Because I can take the time to focus on my breath instead of focus on what was keeping me awake. So whale breathing is like very interesting to me, because I feel like a pattern of healing. You talk a lot about healing. I think if we can be healed people, we can function better, right?
Mm-hmm. So what I'm finding out, and again, I am not a therapist or a doctor. This is just from what I'm seeing from clients, from classes, is my method of this work is very much about grounding us first, grounding us in our body. Because like you were even saying, wouldn't that be a lot for somebody to breathe? Yes. And we have to, and what I have this, what I energetically do is I open myself, because I work with energy too. I open myself to be the space holder and to get the energies grounded. I will not move us to the heart space till I know if it's a classroom or an individual, till I feel the anchor of the universe, of Mother Earth, of divine. And that piece is so important, especially in today's world right now, because there's so much, as I call it, shadow stuff surfacing. And all of us, and what that means is it's our I'm sorry, I just lost my word. But it's like we're starting to bump into our parts that are a little bit more dense, heavy, heavy energies, emotions, and what happens is as we ground into the body and use our breath, those energies start to transmute. It's like it's a beautiful thing because you're breathing now, and now the energy is flowing, and we're connected to Mother and and sky. We're connected to the oneness, so that energy starts to move, and the heart feels the support of the anchor, our pelvic floor, the grounding. Because I feel like I go back to shallow breathing. It's almost like we're all trying to catch our breath, and the heart's trying to catch everything too, and it's overwhelmed. And so what happens when it gets overwhelmed, it gets back into, it will drop into our wounds, our wounds of who we are. And then it kind of and this is where I think mental health kind of comes in. And then we kind of get caught up in our own psychosis, as I call it. Does that make sense? But because now when you're grounded, you got the support of Mother Earth, you got the support of these higher energies, of, whatever you want to call it, higher self, divine, well, divine's the mother, but then you also have the spirit of breath supporting the whole body, the whole community. Then with that happening, it's not as it's such a beautiful, gentle process. Yes, the trauma is still moving, but it's not so overwhelming. And I don't really feel like it has to be this, overwhelming, powerful experience. I used to think, but then when I started bringing the whales in, the whales are, when you're in the presence of a whale in the water, I honestly, the first time I jumped out, I was like horrified. It was huge. And think about that energy in it, but it was probably the most gentle giant I ever experienced. The love, the compassion, the beauty, the way it moved, the way it wanted to engage in me. And that was very Mother Divine energy. I felt it right away. And I think that I feel, again, this is just from watching and experiencing my work, is that energy is very much about being and listening, and it needs to evolve into our daily life. And it's very hard because we get caught up in a very, as I call, more old patriarchy thinking that we have to go, 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 and it's not working anymore. Our bodies aren't, mental health crisis is a soul disease, and we have to start taking time to allow ourselves time to just be, to listen to the wisdom of this beautiful body. It's so beautiful. And another thing, that pelvic piece that I talk about, it brings us back hope. And like when you talk about the teenager, well, it's not, suicide crisis, yes, this is a teen platform. It's everywhere. But
Absolutely.
I believe, and hope lives in our pelvic. You can't kill yourself if you're in hope. You only can do it when you're feeling hopeless. So where are we detached? Where are we detached in our bodies? And yes, there's a lot more to that. I agree. The community, the support. And I know that my work right now is interesting because sometimes you don't even know where you're gonna go. And now it is a family disease. And when when parents bump into that, it wakes them up of, okay, something's got to change. And a lot of my work is kind of getting me more into family breathing. Family breathing, holding the space, and explaining even, that it's okay to have your feelings and talk about it. They're very important, right? It's so
Absolutely.
important. and to be heard and seen. And it's not about being fixed. It's more about just be seen. Let me be seen of who I am. And that's like back to the question of compassion, to see that person in their what is that word? I want to say unworthiness. I don't know why that's the word I hear, because we all carry it. It's a shame, the unworthiness, but yet
Absolutely.
you're still a beautiful human being. You're still magnificent, even with that.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like you've touched on grief a little bit. I feel like for my own personal journey, is like carrying both joy. Like I have daily joy. I probably have had it every day of my life, even the day that Robbie died. And sorrow, deep, deep sorrow. Like I carry deep pain, but I
Oh,
can carry both of them and honor them both. And I don't have to stay stuck in one. I'm not like it's possible.
I lost the end piece, but I energetically get where you're coming from. Yes. Can you hear me? Because there was a frozen moment.
I can. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and so with the grief work, this always and I know you probably I lost a baby, and it was a perfect pregnancy. It was a perfect, everything about it was, perfect. And, but through labor, there was, obviously some difficulties that happened. And, I unfortunately lost her. And, there was this moment, well, once, so they made me go through the, labor and everything. And it was pretty early on in the, birth. I mean, in the birthing process. And what happened was, once she was born, I mean, there was, they allowed me to hold her and be with her. And my family was also surrounding me, and I felt very held and loved. And also, I felt so much of what came up for me was this betrayal of how I let her down, because I felt like my body was not able to give her life.
Hmm.
And so what happened though, there was this moment, and I named her after my sister, who my mother-in-law, and her name was, my baby was Catherine Rose. My mom's baby was Catherine Mary. And I was holding her, and my mom was sitting right next to me, and I was just holding her in my grief, totally just like, how could this happen to me? And I looked at my mom, and she lost her baby probably 40 years ago. Never got to hold her, never got to experience it, nothing. And I was like, all of a sudden, it like pulled me out of my own grief, looking at my mother and thinking, this is probably harder for her to watch me go through this versus when she went through it herself. And then I was like, oh my, this whole thought process. And then I'm like, oh my God, she never even got to hold her baby. She never even got to say goodbye or anything. So I had mine,
Hmm.
and I put her in my mother's hand, and I said, Mom, let's grieve together our Catherine. And it was at that moment,
Oh,
Carrie, that I realized this is the work I'm here to do. To walk with people and grieve and go, and it's like an abyss. I mean, I remember you felt like there's this veil between you and that world, especially when you first, and the space that you have to fill, this empty space. It's just there. And one day through that, I had a moment, I'm going to enter it. I don't know what it was horror. I mean, because it just felt so empty. And I feel like you understand what I'm talking about, because something about when you lose a child or anything really, there's even an animal, there's that space that they filled in the world is gone. And now it's like, how am I going to cope? How am I going to walk this? And it was in that I actually wrote about a blog about it, because I entered it and realized how powerful and beautiful the energy of divine is in there. But I have to allow myself to surrender to that grief. And it's not, and we have to do it with someone sometimes. It's not easy. It's a lot of holding. And, like even there's that story of that whale. It was a orca who lost a baby, and she carried her. I think she carried her baby for I want to say 2.5 weeks. And it was like people were writing about it, and I'm like, what is with it? But she was grieving, and she wasn't ready. And when she was ready, she let her go. And I think that with my story, it almost helped me by being together with my mom. It helped me that moment when I had to hand her to the doctor. Now, okay, I was the hardest moment, and I had to, but it helped me to realize I'm handing her to God, and He will take good care of her, right?
Yeah.
So that's where the business came. So my Blooming Rose Healing came from my daughter.
Oh, awesome. Yes, Blooming Rose Healing is your website. BLOOMING Rose ROSE
Yeah.
healing.com. Thank you for sharing that story, Mary. We're going to wrap up. I'm going to ask you 2 more questions. What's your favorite part of your work?
Oh my goodness. I love all of it. I mean, I love learning. I love touching people's breath, each one step at a time. I love these moments. I love, it's I mean, I love life, and just where life has taken me. And I hope that, and my passion is really wanting to just help educate people about this breath, because it's needed. We need to come together. When I was to wrap it up, I was in Africa last summer. I had this moment where I had like 65 people in the room breathing together. I mean, I've had bigger venues not helping, but this was my event. And the beautiful thing was there was just, even me as the facilitator, I was feeling everybody's resistance. I'm feeling all this, and I'm even questioning, oh my God, they're not getting it. They're not. But the beautiful thing, and that 65 people, peace, love, calm, came. And it was so beautiful to be present in a country that's going through also a continent, I should say. And here we are bringing peace, and we're sending that out into the world. So
awesome.
It's a beautiful thing.
You have a gift. Can we end with the same question I ask all of my guests? That question is, what does the world need to hear right now?
To just breathe, but like this.
Awesome. Thank you. Mary, thank you for being our guest today on Hopeful Conversation. To our listeners, be sure to tune in to our next episode. And until then, remember, hold on, pain ends.